They said her body had no value. They said her life was a mistake. So they buried her alive. And expected the world to forget her. They were wrong. The wind howled across the red stone plateau of Karos Prime, carrying dust and whispers through the open execution ring. Tall alien structures surrounded the circle, carved with symbols of law, order, and biological purity. This was where mistakes were erased quietly. No blood. No screams allowed. Only soil and silence. Zyra lay buried up to her neck. The earth pressed tightly against her chest, crushing her ribs with every shallow breath. Her arms were trapped beneath the soil, numb and useless. Her purple skin burned where the sun struck it, while cold crept into her bones from below. She had been here for hours. Maybe longer. Her crime was not treason. Not violence. Not rebellion. Her crime was biology. The Council of Breeders had tested her months ago. Charts. Numbers. Cold screens filled with symbols she barely understood. Bone density slightly lower than standard. Internal organs incompatible with long-term gestation. Genetic patterns labeled inefficient. The verdict had been immediate. Unfit for breeding. Unworthy of resources. A biological dead end. In Karo society, a female without reproductive value was not considered a full citizen. She was considered wasted potential. And wasted things were returned to the soil. Zyra blinked slowly as sweat ran into her eyes. She forced herself to breathe evenly. Panic would only make it worse. Panic would make the soil feel heavier. Around her, a crowd had gathered, but none stepped forward. Most watched in silence. Some looked away. A few whispered. She should be grateful they didn't execute her. At least this way, the records stay clean. Zyra wanted to scream at them. But screaming wasted oxygen. Her throat burned. Her neck trembled. She focused on the sky instead, a pale orange blur above her. She wondered if this was how her mother had felt, years ago, when she vanished after failing her second fertility trial. No funeral. No explanation. Just absence. A shadow moved at the edge of her vision. Footsteps approached the ring. The crowd shifted uneasily. A human had stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a faded work jacket marked with maintenance insignia. His boots were dusty. His hair was streaked with grey. One sleeve was rolled up, revealing a scarred forearm that spoke of old battles and hard survival. Beside him stood a small human girl, clutching his hand tightly. "Dad," the child whispered, her voice shaking, "they buried her alive." The man said nothing at first. His jaw tightened. His eyes locked onto Zyra's face. Zyra saw something there she had not seen all day. Anger. Not loud anger. Not wild anger. The dangerous kind. The quiet kind. "How long has she been here?" he asked. No one answered. One of the alien elders finally stepped forward, his voice calm and rehearsed. "This does not concern you, human. The female has been judged according to our law." The man's fingers clenched into fists. "You buried a living person," he said slowly. "That concerns me." "She is not considered viable," the elder replied. "Her continued existence serves no purpose." The little girl's grip tightened. "She's breathing," she said. "I can see her breathing." Zyra forced her eyes to focus. The child's face swam into view, round, pale, eyes wide with horror and confusion. Zyra had never seen a human child this close before. The man stepped over the low stone boundary of the ring. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Human," an elder snapped. "You are violating." The man ignored him. He knelt in front of Zyra, close enough that she could smell metal and dust on his clothes. His voice dropped, steady and controlled. "Can you hear me?" Zyra swallowed painfully. "Yes." Her voice came out cracked, barely louder than the wind. "Can you breathe?" "Enough," she said. "Not for long." That was all he needed to hear. Without asking permission, without looking back, the human placed his hands into the packed soil around her shoulders and began to dig. The dirt was hard, compacted by design. He broke it apart with raw strength, fingers scraping, knuckles bleeding. Soil fell away in heavy clumps. "Stop this at once," an elder shouted. "This is an official correction." The human did not stop. The little girl stepped closer to the ring. "Dad, they're angry." "They were angry before," he replied. "They just didn't care who they hurt." Zyra's chest expanded slightly as pressure eased. Air rushed into her lungs, sharp and painful but precious. Tears spilled from her eyes without permission. No one had ever fought for her before. The elders moved closer now, their voices rising, threats spilling out, legal consequences, loss of housing, removal of work permits. The human looked up at them, dirt smeared across his face. "Write whatever you want in your records," he said. "I'm not leaving her here." He dug faster. When Zyra's arms finally came free, they collapsed uselessly at her sides. The human slipped his arms around her carefully, lifting her from the ground inch by inch as if she was something fragile. The crowd watched in stunned silence. The moment Zyra's body left the soil completely, the execution ring lost its power. The human wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. "My name is Elias," he said softly. "You're safe now." Zyra looked at him through blurred vision. No one had ever said those words to her before. Behind them, the elders whispered urgently to one another. They did not see salvation. They saw a mistake. And they would not let that mistake go easily. Elias didn't carry Zyra like a trophy. He carried her like a living question the city had tried to bury. The moment he stepped out of the ring, the air changed. The crowd that had been silent now became a wall of eyes, and those eyes had a new emotion inside them. Fear. Not fear of Zyra. Fear of what it meant when a human refused to obey. His daughter, Lena, hurried beside him, small hands clenched, trying to look brave. She kept glancing back at the elders as if expecting them to throw chains. Zyra's legs barely worked. Her joints screamed, stiff from hours trapped and folded beneath the earth. Elias shifted her weight, letting her lean on him, letting her move at her own pace. "Don't talk," he told her quietly. "Save your strength." Zyra wanted to argue. Pride was the last thing Kairos hadn't stolen from her. But her throat felt like sandpaper and her chest still fought for full breaths. So she nodded once and focused on staying upright. Behind them, the elders didn't shout anymore. They did something worse. They smiled. The tallest elder raised one hand, and the plaza speakers, small black towers built into the stone, clicked to life with a clean, official tone. "Attention," the voice said. "By order of the Breeding Council and the Terrace Authority, human worker Elias Venn is in violation of correction protocol. Harboring an unfit subject is classified as biological interference. Assistance will be questioned. All citizens are instructed to report the human's location." Lena's face went pale. "Dad." Elias didn't slow. "Keep walking." Zyra understood the trick immediately. The announcement wasn't only for capture. It was for isolation. Kairos didn't need to beat someone to break them. They made the whole city turn its back. They turned neighbors into informants, friends into strangers, and kindness into a punishable act. A few humans on the terrace looked toward Elias with alarm. Some stepped away quickly. Others looked down at their shoes as if the stone had become more interesting than a living person being hunted. Zyra's stomach twisted. This was her fault. Elias took a side route along the ridge, away from the main housing circles. He moved with the confidence of someone who knew every alley and maintenance tunnel. His job wasn't glamorous, but it made him invisible in ways that mattered. He glanced down at Lena. "Rules," he murmured. Lena nodded fast. "No stopping. No talking to strangers. If I can't see you, I go to the green valve door." "Good." Zyra's eyes narrowed. "You planned for this." "I planned for trouble," he said. "Kairos loves trouble. They just prefer it happens to somebody else." They reached a narrow corridor between two stone buildings. Elias slid a hand over a maintenance panel, pressed a hidden latch, and the metal cover swung open. A dark passage yawned behind it, smelling of cold air and machine oil. Lena climbed in first without hesitation. Elias guided Zyra after her, careful not to jolt her ribs. The passage led down a sloping service tunnel where pipes hummed softly in the walls. Above them, faintly, Zyra heard footsteps begin to run. Search teams. She turned her head, listening, and the old fear tried to bloom again. The old helplessness. The knowledge that no matter how hard she fought, the council always won. Elias must have sensed it because he tightened his grip on her shoulder. "Hey," he said, low and firm. "Don't go back into that ring in your head. You're not there anymore." Zyra swallowed. "They will punish you." Elias gave a humorless breath. "They've been punishing people like me since we arrived. Different name for it. Same game." Lena looked back at Zyra, eyes shining. "My teacher says humans shouldn't get involved. But, if you don't, then you're just watching." Zyra stared at the child. "Why do you care?" Lena hesitated, then spoke like it cost her something. "Because my mom died. And nobody fixed it. Nobody made it fair. And Dad, he tries to pretend he doesn't care, but he does." Elias's jaw tightened. He didn't correct her. He just kept walking. Zyra felt the words land inside her like a weight. Not cruel. Not heavy in the way soil was heavy. Heavy in a different way. Human grief. Human loyalty. She had been taught humans were loud and unstable. Clever in a small way, but emotionally weak. Easy to manipulate. Easy to scare. But this man wasn't scared. He was grieving, and still moving forward. The tunnel opened into a small maintenance chamber lit by a dim amber strip. Tools hung neatly on the wall. A cot sat in the corner. Water canisters. Emergency rations. A place built for someone who expected systems to fail. Elias lowered Zyra onto the cot and quickly checked her arms, her shoulders, the marks where the soil had crushed her. He moved like someone used to injuries. Zyra winced. "You've done this before." Elias's eyes flicked to his scarred forearm. "Space doesn't forgive mistakes. You learn fast or you die." Lena knelt by Zyra's feet and carefully pulled off the thin ceremonial wraps that were filthy with dust. She replaced them with a soft thermal blanket from a storage bin. Zyra's throat tightened. She looked away, ashamed of the trembling in her face. "You shouldn't waste supplies on me," she whispered. Elias poured water into a small cup and held it to her lips. "Drink." Zyra drank. The water felt like life. "Why?" she asked again, because she needed the answer. "Why risk everything for someone your society doesn't even claim?" Elias leaned back against the wall, studying her like she was a problem with more layers than it seemed. "Because I watched them bury you," he said. "And I realized something." Zyra waited. Elias spoke slowly, each word chosen with care. "They're not afraid of you being unfit. They're afraid of anyone who proves their system is wrong." Zyra's breath caught. Elias pointed up toward the ceiling as if he could point through rock. "Kairos is built on one rule: usefulness equals worth. If they admit you have worth without their approval, then their whole world cracks." Lena's eyes widened. "Like a glass dome." "Exactly," Elias said. "And when glass starts cracking, the people in charge don't ask how to fix it. They hunt the person who pointed it out." Zyra felt something stir beneath the pain. Not hope. Not yet. Something sharper. "If they take me back," she said softly, "they will bury me again. Deeper. They will make an example." Elias nodded. "Which is why we won't let them take you back." Zyra stared at him. "How?" Elias pushed off the wall and walked to a sealed cabinet. He typed a code and pulled out a slim metal case the size of a book. He opened it, revealing a compact device with a dull black lens and a set of folded antennas. Zyra's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Elias looked at her, and for the first time his expression turned almost cold. "A recorder," he said. "A real one. Not the filtered city feed." Lena leaned forward. "Dad, you said you stopped doing that." Elias didn't look at her. I stopped because it didn't feel like it mattered. He clicked the device on. A tiny light blinked once. Today, he said, it matters. Zyra's heart started beating faster. You want to expose them. I want to break their silence, Elias replied. Caro survives because everyone believes they're alone. You weren't the first. You won't be the last. Zyra swallowed, her voice trembling. The council controls the networks. Elias smiled, and it wasn't kind. They control Caro's networks, he said. Not human ones. Lena stared at the recorder like it was dangerous magic. Above them, the tunnel vents carried a new sound, metal boots, closer now, and the faint chirp of scanning equipment. Search teams had reached the service levels. Elias shut the cabinet softly and lifted a finger to his lips. Lena went still, eyes huge. Zyra held her breath, every muscle locking in fear. And then, from the darkness of the tunnel, a voice echoed, smooth, official, almost polite. Human Elias Venn, it called. We know you are here. Elias didn't answer. The voice continued, louder. Return the unfit subject. In exchange, the child will be spared, and your punishment will be reduced. Lena's hand shot to Elias's sleeve. Zyra's stomach dropped. They weren't just hunting. They were bargaining. And that meant they believed Elias had something they couldn't afford to lose. Elias leaned down close to Zyra, his voice barely more than breath. They're scared, he whispered. Good. He placed the recorder in Zyra's trembling hands. Can you hold that steady? He asked. Zyra stared at the device, then at the man who had dragged her out of the grave. She nodded once. Yes, she whispered. I can. Elias turned toward the tunnel entrance, shoulders squaring, eyes hard. Then he did the unthinkable again. He stepped forward to meet them. The search team entered the tunnel slowly. They were Sarah enforcers, tall and narrow, their armor pale and polished to reflect authority rather than war. Their weapons were not meant for battlefields. They were meant for control, stunners tuned to pain, restraint fields designed to paralyze without leaving marks. Clean violence. The lead enforcer raised one hand as Elias stepped into the light. Human Elias Venn, the enforcer said calmly. Your cooperation will reduce collateral damage. Elias stopped walking but did not raise his hands. Behind him, Zyra sat upright on the cot, clutching the recorder so tightly her fingers ached. Lena stood half-hidden behind a tool cabinet, her breathing shallow, her eyes fixed on her father's back. Elias spoke evenly. You buried a living woman alive. Don't pretend this is about order. The enforcer tilted its head slightly. Order requires difficult choices. That's funny, Elias replied. You made the easy one. The enforcer gestured behind it. A hovering drone drifted forward, its lens glowing faintly. Return the unfit subject. The child will not be charged. Your sentence will be administrative only. Zyra felt the words like knives. Administrative. As if burying her had been paperwork. She forced herself to speak, her voice shaking but audible. Why am I unfit? The enforcer's gaze flicked toward her. Your biology does not align with future production needs. That's not an answer, Zyra said. That's an excuse. A ripple of tension moved through the team. They were not used to questions from people already written off. Elias smiled slightly. She's right. If this was about efficiency, you'd have ended it quickly. You didn't. You buried her where everyone could see. The enforcer's voice cooled. This discussion is over. Elias stepped aside just enough for the recorder's lens to catch the full scene. No, he said. This discussion is public. The drone hesitated. Zyra felt it then. A subtle shift. The enforcers had not expected resistance framed this way. Not loud, not violent, but documented. Caro's depended on controlled narratives. Rituals without witnesses beyond the approved frame. Elias was tearing the frame apart. Dad, Lena whispered urgently. They're scanning. Elias tapped his wrist. Already expected. The enforcer's scanners beeped, confused, then beeped again. Their system showed Elias standing alone. Zyra's eyes widened. How? Maintenance perk, Elias said quietly. Human systems don't talk to theirs unless we let them. The lead enforcer stiffened. Deactivate your device immediately. Elias raised his voice just enough to carry. State your name and authority for the record. Silence. Elias nodded. That's what I thought. Zyra lifted the recorder higher, forcing her hand steady. She focused on breathing, on holding the moment. One of the enforcers stepped forward. Human, you are escalating this unnecessarily. Elias laughed once, short and sharp. You buried someone alive and you're worried about escalation. He turned slightly, his voice rising. Tell me something. How many before her? The enforcer said nothing. How many women failed your numbers and vanished? Elias pressed. 10? 100? More. Zyra felt something crack inside her chest, not pain, but recognition. She had wondered the same thing for years. The enforcer finally answered, coldly. Individual data is irrelevant. There it is, Elias said. That's the disease. You don't see people. You see inventory. The enforcer raised its weapon. Lena gasped. Zyra felt fear surge, but beneath it, something else rose faster. Anger. She had been quiet her whole life. Measured. Careful. Small. She was done being small. Zyra lifted her chin and spoke directly into the recorder. My name is Zyra Talon, she said. I was born on Karo's Prime. I worked in nutrient regulation for 8 cycles. I paid my allocations. I followed every rule. Her voice steadied as she continued. When the council tested me, they told me my body was wrong. Not sick. Not dangerous. Just wrong for their future. She swallowed. They buried me alive today to erase me without calling it death. The enforcers froze. Not because they cared. Because this was no longer quiet. The drone's light flickered as external signals pushed against the council network. Human relays. Off-world observers. Independent traders. Workers who had quietly installed human comm patches years ago just in case. Elias had known. Karo's was not as isolated as it believed. Shut it down, the lead enforcer ordered sharply. The drone surged forward and slammed into an invisible barrier. Elias exhaled slowly. That's the thing about humans, he said. We don't wait for permission to build exits. A low rumble shook the tunnel. Emergency lights flickered. Lena cried out. Dad! Elias turned just enough to meet her eyes. Stay where you are. The rumble wasn't structural damage. It was voices. From above. From the city. From the comm net. Zyra heard them spill through the recorder's audio feed, confused, angry, shocked. What is this? They buried her. That's illegal. Since when? The enforcer backed up half a step. Elias pressed forward. Your system works because everyone believes resistance is pointless. Today, they're watching you hesitate. The enforcer's voice hardened. This changes nothing. You cannot protect her forever. Elias nodded. I don't need forever. He stepped aside, fully revealing Zyra to the camera. I just need long enough for people to remember what a person looks like. The tunnel shook again, this time closer. Boots. Human boots. Maintenance workers. Dock crews. Human families who had lived quietly under Karo's law for years, learning when to stay silent. They weren't silent now. The enforcers turned, recalculating. Zyra's chest rose with a breath that felt almost free. For the first time, the ground wasn't pressing her down. Elias looked back at her. This is the part where it gets harder, he said gently. Zyra met his gaze, her voice steady. I survived the grave, she said. I can survive what comes next. Lena stepped out from hiding and took Zyra's hand. The enforcers retreated, not defeated, but exposed. And somewhere above, the perfect order of Kairos Prime began to fracture. Kairos Prime had never known noise like this. Not explosions. Not riots. Something worse. Questions. They spread faster than fear ever had. Across terraces and transit lines, across work hubs and residential rings, screens flickered to life with feeds that were never meant to be seen. Zyra's voice, steady, cracked, alive, echoed through channels the council had ignored for decades. They buried me alive. They called it correction. They told me my life had no future value. The breeding council convened within minutes. Tall figures gathered in the white chamber above the city, their robes immaculate, their expressions strained. They spoke quickly now. Too quickly. This exposure is unacceptable. Human networks must be severed immediately. Containment has failed. But outside their chamber, containment was already breaking. Human maintenance crews shut down non-essential transit for safety reasons. Dock workers delayed cargo scans. Data technicians introduced tiny errors into the city's compliance algorithms. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. Just enough to make systems hesitate. Humans were good at hesitation. They had survived by learning when to slow a machine down. In the maintenance tunnel, Elias felt the shift before he saw it. The enforcers no longer advanced. They stood rigid, receiving updates, recalculating. Zyra sat straighter on the cot, the recorder resting against her chest. Her hands no longer shook. "What happens now?" she asked. Elias didn't answer right away. He was listening, to the hum of the pipes, the rhythm of boots outside, the tone of the enforcer's breathing. "Now," he said finally, "they decide whether they're rulers or jailers." Lena frowned. "What's the difference?" "Rulers pretend they're right," Elias said. "Jailers know they're afraid." The lead enforcer's comm unit chirped sharply. Its posture changed, stiffening further. "Human Elias Venn," it said. "You are ordered to surrender the device and the subject for immediate reassessment." Zyra let out a quiet, humorless breath. "Reassessment," she repeated. "So now I'm useful again." The enforcer did not answer. Elias stepped forward. "Say it on record," he demanded. "Say why you buried her." Silence stretched. The enforcer's hesitation was captured perfectly by the recorder. Zyra felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest. Not relief. Not safety. Power. Not the kind that crushed others, but the kind that made lies difficult. The tunnel lights flickered again, then steadied. Elias glanced at his wrist display and allowed himself a thin smile. "Human Relay 3 is live," he murmured. "Dock feeds too." Lena's eyes widened. "That's a lot." "That's people," Elias said. "People who've been waiting." The enforcer's tone sharpened. "This interference will destabilize the city." Elias tilted his head. "You mean it will reveal it?" Without warning, the tunnel shook violently. Zyra gasped as the floor vibrated beneath her. Dust rained from the ceiling. Lena cried out, grabbing Elias's arm. "What was that?" Lena asked. Elias's expression darkened. "That," he said, "was them choosing jailers." Far above, on the upper terrace, the council had authorized force. Security drones poured into the streets, their presence impossible to ignore now. Loudspeakers blared calm, false reassurances. "Stay indoors. Resume duties. Order is maintained." But people didn't resume. They watched. They remembered. In the tunnel, the enforcers advanced again, this time faster, weapons raised. The invisible barriers Elias had deployed flickered under the strain. "We need to move," Elias said. Zyra pushed herself upright. Pain screamed through her legs, but she forced herself to stand. Lena was at her side instantly, offering a shoulder without being asked. "I can walk," Zyra said. "Slowly." "That's enough," Elias replied. They moved deeper into the maintenance network, taking routes never meant for traffic. Elias keyed open bulkheads with codes long dismissed as obsolete. Human engineers had kept them alive out of habit. Habit saved lives. Behind them, stun fire cracked against barriers. The air smelled sharp and electric. Zyra stumbled once, and Elias caught her without breaking stride. "Why are they afraid of me?" Zyra asked breathlessly. "I'm just one person." Elias shook his head. "You're proof." "Of what?" "That their math is wrong," he said. "They believe survival comes from control. Humans learned it comes from adaptation." They burst into a wide service chamber connected to the old freight elevators, huge platforms once used when humans first helped build Caro's infrastructure. Most were abandoned now. Except one. A dozen humans waited there, men and women in work gear, grease-stained and determined. Some held tools. Some held nothing at all. They stepped forward as Elias entered. "You took your time," one woman said, smiling grimly. "Had to make an entrance," Elias replied. Zyra stared at them. "You knew." The woman nodded. "We all saw the ring. We just never thought anyone would step into it." She looked at Zyra with open respect. "You did more than survive. You spoke." Zyra swallowed hard. The elevator platform shuddered to life beneath their feet. "Where does this go?" Lena asked. "Up," Elias said. "Right into the open." As the platform rose, alarms wailed throughout Caro's prime. Drones swarmed overhead. Council channels screamed orders. But it was too late to unsee the truth. The platform broke through into daylight. The central plaza stretched before them, packed with citizens now. Sarah and human alike. The execution ring sat empty, soil disturbed, broken. Every eye turned toward Zyra, toward the woman who had been buried. Elias guided her forward. The noise faded into a heavy silence. Zyra felt her knees weaken. Elias steadied her. Lena squeezed her hand. "You don't have to," Elias whispered. Zyra lifted her head. "Yes," she said. "I do." She stepped to the edge of the ring and raised the recorder. "My name is Zyra Talon," she said, her voice carrying across the plaza. "You were told I was useless." She met the crowd's gaze. "If that is true," she continued, "then why did you need to bury me in public?" The question hit harder than any accusation. The council symbols flickered on the surrounding towers, struggling to reassert control. Zyra didn't let them. "I am alive," she said. "I am not broken. And if your future has no place for people like me." She paused, then finished softly. "Then your future is already dying." The plaza erupted, not in cheers, but in something far more dangerous. Agreement. Elias felt it ripple through the crowd like a rising tide. Caro's prime would never be the same. And the council knew it. They hadn't just lost control of one woman. They had lost control of the story.